The Siege of Seringapatam was the final confrontation of the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War between the British East India Company and the Kingdom of Mysore. The British achieved a decisive victory after breaching the walls of the fortress at Seringapatam and storming the citadel. Tipu Sultan, Mysore's ruler, was killed in the action. The British restored the Wodeyar dynasty to the throne after the victory, but retained indirect control of the kingdom. Opposing forces. The battle consisted of a series of encounters around Seringapatam in the months of April and May 1799. Between the combined forces of the British East India Company and their allies, numbering over 50,000 soldiers in all, and the soldiers of the Kingdom of Mysore, ruled by Tipu Sultan, numbering up to 30,000. The Fourth Anglo-Mysore War came to an end with the defeat and death of Tipu Sultan in the battle. British troop composition. When the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War broke out, the British assembled two large columns under General George Harris. The first consisted of over 26,000 British East India Company troops, 4,000 of whom were European while the rest were local Indian sepoys. The second column was supplied by the Nizam of Hyderabad, and consisted of 10 battalions and over 16,000 cavalry. Together, the Allied force numbered over 50,000 soldiers. Tipu's forces had been depleted by the Third Anglo-Mysore War and the consequent loss of half his kingdom, but he still probably had up to 30,000 soldiers. The British forces consisted of the following: 19th Regiment of Dragoons, 25th Regiment of Dragoons, 12th Regiment of Foot, 33rd Regiment of Foot, 73rd Regiment of Foot, 74th Regiment of Foot, 75th Regiment of Foot, 77th Regiment of Foot, Scotch Brigade, later 94th Regiment, Regiment des Mourons. The Indian forces consisted of the following: 1st Madras Native Infantry, 2nd Madras Native Infantry, 1st Madras Native Cavalry, 2nd Madras Native Cavalry, 3rd Madras Native Cavalry, 4th Madras Native Cavalry, Madras Pioneers, Madras Artillery, 1st Bengal Native Infantry, 2nd Bengal Native Infantry, Bengal Artillery. Siege. Seringapatam was besieged by the British forces on 5 April 1799. The river Cauvery, which flowed around the city of Seringapatam, was at its lowest level of the year and could be forded by infantry if an assault commenced before the monsoon. When letters were exchanged with Tipu, it seemed that he was playing for time. He requested 2 persons to be sent to him for discussions and also stated that he was preoccupied with hunting expeditions. Tipu Sultan's Prime Minister and General, Mir Sadiq, is alleged to have been bought over by the British. The breach. The Governor-General of India, Richard Wellesley, planned the opening of a breach in the walls of Seringapatam. The location of the breach, as noted by Beatson, the author of an account of the Fourth Mysore War, was in the West Curtain, a little to the right of the flank of the northwest bastion. This being the old rampart appeared weaker than the new. The Mysorean defence succeeded in preventing the establishment of a battery on the north side of the river Cauvery on the 22nd of April 1799. However, by the 1st of May, working at night, the British had completed their southern batteries and brought them up to the wall. At sunrise on the 2nd of May, the batteries of the Nizam of Hyderabad succeeded in opening a practical breach in the outer wall. In addition, the mines that were laid under the breach were hit by artillery and blew up prematurely. The leader of the British troops was Major General David Baird, an implacable enemy of Tipu Sultan. 20 years earlier, he had been held captive for 44 months. The storming troops, including men of the 73rd and 74th Regiments, clambered up the breach and fought their way along the ramparts. Storming of Seringapatam. The assault was to begin at 1 p.m., to coincide with the hottest part of the day when the defenders would be taking refreshment. Led by two forlorn hopes, two columns would advance upon the defences around the breach, then wheel right and left to take over the fortifications. A third reserve column, commanded by Arthur Wellesley, would deploy as required to provide support where needed. At 11 a.m. on the 4th of May 1799, the British troops were briefed and whiskey and a biscuit issued to the European soldiers before the signal to attack was given. The Forlorn Hopes, numbering 76 men, led the charge. The columns quickly formed, were ordered to fix bayonets, and began to move forward. The storming party dashed across the river Covery in water 4 feet deep, with covering fire from British batteries, and within 16 minutes had scaled the ramparts and swept aside the defenders quickly. The British follow-up columns turned right and left, sweeping along the inside of the walls until they met on the far side of the city. Tipu's tiger, an automaton now in the Victoria and Albert Museum, was captured at Seringapatam. Death of Tipu. The column that rounded the northwest corner of the outer wall was immediately involved in a serious fight with a group of Mysorean warriors under a short fat officer, which defended every traverse. The officer was observed to be discharging hunting weapons, loaded and passed to him by servants, at the British. After the fall of the city, in the gathering dusk, some of the British officers went to look for the body of Tipu Sultan. He was identified as the fat officer who had fired hunting weapons at the attackers, and his body was found in a choke tunnel-like passage near the Watergate. Benjamin Sydenham described the body as wounded a little above the right ear, and the ball lodged in the left cheek. He had also 3 wounds in the body. He was in stature about 5 feet 8 in and not very fair. He was rather corpulent, had a short neck and high shoulders, but his wrists and ankles were small and delicate. He had large full eyes, with small arched eyebrows and very small whiskers. His appearance denoted him to be above the common stamp, and his countenance expressed a mixture of haughtiness and resolution. He had lastly his turban, and there were no weapons of defense about him. Adaptations. Wilkie Collins's novel The Moonstone begins with the looting of the jewels removed from Seringapatam in 1799 from the legendary treasury of Tipu Sultan. The Battle of Seringapatam is the main conflict in the novel Sharp's Tiger, by Bernard Cornwell. Legacy. 2 cannon captured by the British during the battle were displayed at the Royal Military College, Sandhurst, and now stand in front of the officers' mess at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. Much of the site of the battle is still intact, including the ramparts, the Watergate, the place where the Tipu Sultan's body was found, the area where the British prisoners were held, and the site of the destroyed palace. Around 80 Swiss officers of the Swiss Cimarron Regiment, who fell during the siege, and their family members are buried in the garrison cemetery, Seringapatam. Memorial by the Mysore government. Memorial to the Siege of Seringapatam, erected by the Mysore government. Memorial The Siege of Seringapatam by the Mysore government, Seringapatam. European office killed in the Siege of Seringapatam, Seringapatam. Forces engaged in the Siege of Seringapatam, Seringapatam. Forces engaged in the Siege of Seringapatam, Seringapatam. Memorial to the Siege of Seringapatam, Seringapatam.